What's up YouTube? My name is Kenny G, and in today's video we're going to talk about how you can pass a software engineering interview. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe below, hit the like button. It definitely helps your boy out on the channel. And without further ado, let's get into it. So first thing first, I recommend is that you make sure you understand the language of your choice that you're going to be using for the interview in and out. Whether that's Python, JavaScript, Java, Swift, it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure you know that language in and out. And the reason I say that is because in a lot of cases, you're probably not going to be using an IDE unless you're working pair programming with someone else during the interview. But if you're sent to a whiteboard, then obviously you don't have the luxury of using the IDE. So you need to know that language. Plus, even if you're working next to someone, you don't want to be going through the process of trying to think about like how to build an array or how to build a class or a struct or something like that. That's something you should pretty much know off of memory. And with that being said, the other thing is you want to make sure that you understand that language in and out to the point whereas you know how things work underneath the hood and you know everything overall about the language. So say for instance, you're using JavaScript. So JavaScript is a scripting language. Or you're using something like Swift. Swift is a safe type language. Those are the type of things you should know about your language prior to going into an interview. If you don't know those things, you want to make sure you take the time to look that up because that's going to help you tremendously in the interview. So for me, as an iOS engineer, I use Swift. So me using Swift, I know that Swift is a safe type language. So I'm gonna be having guard statements, if-let statements, and different things like that, probably while I'm going through the process of building out whatever I'm building, whether that's going to a whiteboard, solving a data structure problem or whatever, or I'm sitting down working on a feature. With that being said, I don't want to make small mistakes while I'm building out whatever I'm doing. Say I'm using the bang operator or something like that in the wrong manner or something. You know, I should know these little bitty things about my language, and I should know the to-dos and don'ts, if you get what I'm saying. So just make sure you know the language in and out, and you should be good on that end. So for the next step, I would honestly say make sure you know how to build out complex systems or applications with your language. So make sure you know how to build out different features and things with the language of your choice. Make sure you're very comfortable with doing things like that, and you've worked on, an application with the language of your choice that you're going to be going with. Because if you go into an interview and you're going to be pair programming with somebody, they may ask you to build out a feature, and if you're not super familiar with the language nor worked on different features before, it's going to be really hard to try to build out that feature if you've never done it on your own. So take the time to just, look up certain features that are mainly asked during an interview for a software engineer and get familiar with it so you know how to build things out. Whereas it's something as simple as, for iOS development, say you may want to take some data from the back end, make a request, fetch that data and display it in some kind of manner in the application. You should know how to do that easily, whether you're going to be using a table view, collection view, it doesn't matter. Or if you're using another language, for as say you're a front-end developer, you should understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript well enough where you should be able to build out whatever the person asks you. If they ask you to build out this screen for a website, you should be able to know how to go in, build it out easily without, running into any hiccups and, be good to go from there. So that's just my tip on that end. So here's one of the last ones I probably mentioned that you want to know for your software engineering interview, and that is data structures and algorithms. Now, I know, for most people, they hate data structures and algorithms. Me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of them, but let's admit it, as a software engineer, you kind of need to know them depending on the companies you want to work for. And especially if you're trying to work for some of the big top tech companies like Facebook, Google, and Apple, there's no way around it. Now, some companies have moved away from using those data structures and algorithms. And personally, I'm totally on board with that. But overall, you just have to know them. So some of the common data structures that you're typically going to see during an interview would be a linked list, a stack, a queue, a tree, you'll see a graph, min and max heap, and those are the main ones that I can think of at the moment. Honestly, as long as you know those in and out, you understand time and space complexity, you should be good. Me personally, the way I would recommend that you guys go through the process of learning these, first, make sure you learn the data structure in and out. understand the time complexity of that data structure, understand the space complexity as well. Then make sure you go ahead and build out that data structure with the language of your choice that you're going to be using for the interview. From there, make sure you know how to build out the helper methods because you may need them during the interview. Also, from there, go ahead and start looking at LeetCode. Look at LeetCode, look at some of the questions that are on LeetCode. Try to solve the easy questions first. After you get comfortable with the easy questions, then slowly migrate over to the medium questions and then over to the hard questions. From my experience, I think for the most part, most people probably agree, you're gonna see either the easy or medium questions usually. Not so often you're gonna get hit with the hard ones. So just get familiar with the easy and medium problems and then try to go towards the hard ones, because if you at least work on the hard ones, you know you're not gonna see those, but your mind gets wrapped around on how to solve those type of problems. You practice on paper first. When you practice on paper and you do everything by hand, when you get to a whiteboard, it's pretty easy to just go through the process of just building things out. So practice on paper first, then when you get to a whiteboard, you can solve everything, you know, you'll be good to go. Because like I said before, you're 9 times out of 10, you're not gonna have an IDE. So you wanna get comfortable building things, solving these problems by hand. Outside of that, you should be pretty much good. If you need any other resources, I will also look into Premp. Premp is pretty good. I'll leave a link to it inside my description. But Premp is pretty good. You can practice with another person with solving some of these problems. And that's a good way to get yourself going. Again, use LeetCode. You can use HackerRank. You can also get the book Elements of Programming. I think I mentioned it in my other video. And that's another great book to use. Cracking the Coding Interview is another good book as well. But study before you walk into these interviews. Make sure you know these data structures and algorithms like the back of your hand. They should be pretty easy to solve, the easy problems. If you struggle with the medium problems, it's totally fine. Just make sure you know how to solve the easy ones with no problem and work through the medium problems and get yourself super familiar with, you know, some of those questions and knowing how to solve them. Don't just try to memorize the answers, but understand the concepts of how to solve the problem. That's the biggest thing a lot of people mess up at. So if you understand the concepts and knowing when to use what data structure, then you're good to go. Outside of that, I would just say make sure you apply to a ton of companies, and as you apply to a ton of companies, it'll help ingrain the things that you've already learned. And also don't stress yourself out with the interviews. If you fail a bunch of them, hey, it is what it is. Just go through the process of just learning, and eventually you're gonna pass one of them, and hey, you'll get an offer. So that's my 2 cents on that. So outside of that, I just want to thank you guys for watching the video. Again, make sure you subscribe below, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. See you.